Previously on Keep and Destroy.
Hello, Adam. Thank you very much for having me. And I did a Captain Scarlet Halo Marine crossover. I sit on the train backwards because I like looking out the window and feeling like, yeah, I'm in an SPV.
Like UFO, Space 1999 is just as pessimistic. Koenig just sees everything for what it is. It's going to be foolish. Let's just not try.
And then they find the pyramid. It's like a weird Indiana Jones vibe that I really liked. You might break members of Shadow, but Shadow itself will still be strong.
Roper is on his own as well. He doesn't even have any backup.
That explains it. They're removing the oxygen.
Hello and welcome to Keep and Destroy. I'm your host, Adam Luff. This is the Gerry Anderson podcast where I interview the fans and ask what 5 do they enjoy and want to keep, and what 5 do they hate and want to destroy. And in this episode, we continue our interview with AJ Frost. So here's the start of his destroy list.
Okay, now it's time to go from the keep list to the destroy list. So what would you like to destroy, AJ?
Joe 19, it's the episode Colonel McLean. The reason I don't really like this episode is more as an adult than as a kid. He gets the brain pattern, he becomes a genius in whatever field they've given him, and I like that. But even as a child, it'd be hard to believe that just because you've given him an army uniform and then go, this is a vehicle driving expert, you can't stick him in front of a sergeant. You're now going to follow his orders to the letter. As a member of the armed forces, I just can't believe it anymore. It'd be a case of, no, I would laugh. And the fact that, you know, he quotes Riggs and he says, put this man in a citation because he's in the correct shoes, I'd be like, how do you know? I would have thought it more believable if they'd have told, like, you know, a couple of drivers, right, drive the vehicle to this location. You will find a vehicle there to drive you back. You are not to say anything. Do not engage with anyone. Do not stay behind. And you just see then Joe appear, get in like the army gear, ready to drive the vehicle and do it himself. The subplot where they're trying to figure out why these canisters are exploding, that bit I still liked. But it's just the constant fact that every now and again you're going back to these two full-grown, you know, career army men taking orders from a child, and they only question it the once. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, he's proved he's a brilliant vehicle driver, but at the same time, you're still going to be thinking, this is a kid. Why is a kid driving a truck full of explosives? I don't know why anyone would question it, because along with every other episode, nobody suspects a kid. That's the point that Joe 90 was good for. So in this episode, it's almost kind of like, oh, we can just do anything we want with this. And that to me, just, no, I didn't like it. It was too unbelievable, even for Joe. So it's a case of, no, Joe, do not do this again. Captain Scarlet, despite it being my second favourite series of all, and it's Flight 104. There are little things they slip in that don't quite make sense. They're protecting a professor, so they're like, yeah, we're flying him commercial rather than with Spectrum. Makes sense. But then when they bump into the journalist, and the journalist has got the button camera, the same as Captain Scarlet has, he'll get a surprise when he develops the pictures of me. And then it's a black silhouette. And at that point I go, hold up. Captain Scarlet has the Mr. On ability, which means that he is completely unaffected by X-rays. There's a black silhouette. Does that mean that Mr. Ons can't have their pictures taken and it just means they're a black silhouette? In which case, is the Mr. On detector now useless? And can we just use a normal camera, develop it and go, Mr. On, black silhouette? Or was he using something to jam it? Or in which case, if he was, why didn't he just make the whole photo completely blurry? Mr. On detector, X-rays, produces a photograph. Normal camera, black silhouette. No, nobody ever mentioned that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I always thought it was like Operation Time. It starts off as an X-ray, then it slowly goes to a silhouette, and then it becomes a real hand. I just assumed the photo would be like that, where it would slowly morph into a real picture. But of course, we never find out. So it's just there for a cheap joke, really, isn't it? If anything, so.
I appreciate that little joke. It's just it's at the expense of, you know, set lines already. So that to me, again, bit of a plot hole. But the fact that nobody notices until much later on that the flight crew have gone missing. I'm thinking the flight crew are the first people on the plane. We all know this. Hang on, why is it taking like halfway through the flight for them to notice? And then it's only at that point where it's like, you know, where's the stewardess? When it's like, the plane's empty.
There's also, where were the stewardesses during the whole demonstration? They didn't have that either, unless they don't have that in the future anymore, maybe.
they lose the control just being in that close proximity to that power station. Now, in Operation Time, you don't suddenly see the doctor start having any effects from being in the generator room. It's only when it hits him and it confirms that it kills him. Being near the high voltage has never seemed to affect them. If that had been sort of more canoned, it would be a bit more understandable. Maybe if we have something high voltage, like a high voltage thing, we could maybe protect vehicles. They never investigate it. And then finally, it's actually the landing itself.
Load the undercarriage.
SIG. No response. A stray bullet must have broken the electrical circuit when I shot through the lock.
Might be cynical of me as an engineer. There's a voice in my head saying, emergency, the emergency, because all planes have a little like lever or a switch that if you flick it, it blows down the landing gear so that you can emergency land. So why couldn't they remember to write in maybe, like an emergency extension for the gear and then have that fail? That would be more like, okay, now that's an emergency.
The fact that Captain Black drugged the crew rather than just killing them. Now, whether or not he did that because he didn't want to draw attention, because of being in an airport, maybe that's acceptable. But it kind of reminds me of a sequence in White as Snow at the beginning when Captain Black doesn't just simply shoot the controller, which to me makes no sense. But how do you feel about that? Do you consider that to be a inconsistency as well?
Not too much, no, because I don't think they believe in senseless killing. I think they're only destroying what they need to get their objectives. But I think the Mysterons, they're not heartless. They're just trying to achieve their objective.
You say that the Mysterons don't do senseless shooting, but in Avalanche, when Eddie shoots Joe at the gate, that was your mistake, Earthman. He just shoots him. And that's it. He didn't have to do that, but he chose to anyway. And yet he never shoots any of the other guards. Again, I find that to be a little bit of an inconsistency in Avalanche, the fact that he doesn't bother shooting the others.
Okay. So he was here, but he left a couple of minutes ago.
No, I do agree. That's a very good point. And I would have said, because, as soon as the sentry goes back inside during Avalanche, he would have probably, started to feel effects and could have maybe got back out in time to raise an alarm. But then he doesn't do it to the other sentries. And it's a case of, okay, yeah, that is an inconsistency. So, no, I do agree with you on that point. I think it's sort of it depends how you see it. Maybe it's Captain Black himself. Maybe he's got like a little bit of humanity. It's like, I don't want to do this. So, very good point, actually.
Funny enough, again, what you've just said about Captain Black having humanity, the other person said the exact same thing. They said that somebody did come up with a theory about Captain Black fighting with his humanity. That, to me, feels like retroactively trying to explain things, fans coming up with their theories rather than it being part of the show's lore as they were writing it at the time. So I think at this point, Captain Black is 100% gone. Pardon the pun, he is a puppet for the Mysterons. So I think he has basically just been hijacked. There's no going back with, Captain Scarlet came back, but Captain Black was turned into a different kind of Mysteron because obviously every Mysteron agent looks identical. Black was more possessed, shall we say. They sort of transformed him into this zombie. And to me, that's there's no going back with Captain Black, sadly.
No, I do see your point, and I actually do agree with you there. Stingray, man from the Navy. The reason I'm a little iffy on this is it's the fact that they decided to use Stingray as a moving target. That to me is a bit like, why would you use one of the most advanced submarines and use it as a target? There's always going to be rivalry between groups, but I think they went a little too far with it. The fact that it leads to the point where Troy Tempest actually storms out, it's going overboard. It's just to the point where they are deliberately trying to get each other. As an engineer, there is no way, and I know it might be taking a little liberty, you cannot turn a practice weapon into an armed weapon. And you certainly wouldn't shoot one that had that ability at a friendly force. The fact that, he just goes, I'll arm another missile, he arms the missile. No, that's a test war. That's a test unit. It shouldn't have a warhead. It should have, it just has sensors and stuff to sort of like see how it's tracking, to see, can it be improved? That's a little inconsistency as an older person. The man from the Navy is still a bit too arrogant for me, even after he gets, dressed down by Commander Shaw. It's a case of, well, yeah, you did behave badly, even though you were at gunpoint by two aquamphibians. But then it also presses the question, how do they get on board? Because most submarines have like a one sealed locked hatch.
I never thought about the aquamphibians breaking in. Jesus Christ, yeah, that completely dismantles the entire structure now. You can't, when you were talking about missiles having warheads, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, how would I rework this? Maybe if they disabled the Navy ship and the Terrorfishers fired their missiles, but on the other hand, the Terrorfishers missiles don't have the same trajectory as the Navy one, so the Terrorfish missile wouldn't be able to track it very well. So yeah, I don't know how I could rewrite that. You really have destroyed this episode. Even I can't defend it.
Instead of saying I won't have time to arm another missile, if he'd said I only had the one live missile, I'd be like, oh, that's believable. You might have a few tests, like a few of the dummy practices, and then like when he wants to do one like on a fixed target that doesn't matter if he gets blown up, that would be believable. It's just little bits like that make it one of the episodes where it's like, no, don't like it.
For me, it's not the worst Stingray episode. That goes to the Invaders personally, and the Cool Caveman. I don't like those two, but I might have to reevaluate that episode just because, damn, I probably can't unsee it now.
Terrorhawks First Strike.
Yeah, here we are. This is going to be a challenge because I love First Strike.
Despite the threat that is known of Zelda, they then still go ahead with what is very clearly a terrible plan. And the main thing is the actual name of the episode, to me, is wrong. Is they keep saying this is a first strike. And in my mind, no, it is not a first strike. The first strike was launched by Zelda during the first few episodes. This is a retaliation strike. So if it was retaliation, I'd be a bit more believable.
I think I can counter that. Because it's General Ripcord and because he's quite an arrogant character, I can imagine he would want to take credit for it.
No, absolutely right. But that's also one of the other things that I really don't like about the episode is that General's arrogance. He comes out of nowhere. He then goes, oh, I was able to track you down. Well, no, you're part of the high-ranking military. So as a general, you're really high up. And you also are probably part of the council that is aware of the Terrorhawks. The fact that he's walking around saying, oh, I've got live grenades. And I'm like, no, why would you do that? All you have to do is someone just has to walk forward and pull one and you're all in trouble. You know, I don't see, they overdid his character a little bit. And Big White One, which to me is a ridiculous name in the first place. It's like, fair enough, naming things isn't the biggest thing, but a ginormous battleship. You couldn't come up with a better name than the Big White One. I mean, you could have called it the Moby Dick for all we know, and it would probably matter because it's a big white whale. But the fact that Dr. Einstein, who is leading the defense against Zelda, keeps saying, you can't do this. She has the ability to control matter. He could have shown them every single piece of footage of the fact that every time they defeat her minions, they get recalled. She was able to transport Einstein out of his own aircraft to her ship and then fly away. All that evidence is there, and he still goes, we can make a first strike and we can win. I know you're being the arrogant general, but there's at least a point somewhere where everyone goes, this isn't going to work. And as bad as it sounds, it's the wrong way round in terms of the fight. Zelda and all her forces launch. It's like overbearing odds. And I'm like, in any other series, it would be the fact that the heroes are having to figure out how to use their abilities to best overcome the defenses of the enemy. But in this one, it's the bad guys are doing their best to stop them. And it's a case of, I know this is all to prove the point that the first strike can't work, but then it just proves that everything that they'd done was a waste of time. And I'm like, all of those resources could have gone to making the Terrorhawks have more abilities. And we've seen that the Terrorhawks have even been able to take the fight to Zelda. It just all got wasted, all because someone with a crackpot idea thought, I'm going to make a first strike, despite all the evidence against him. All that combined is personally why I think First Strike is one of the ones I really don't like.
It's actually my second favourite after Thunder Roar. But before I bring up my reasons, I've noticed actually with Avalanche and Man from the Navy, First Strike has that rivalry between different forces. And obviously in the case of Avalanche, you've liked it. And obviously with Man from the Navy and First Strike, you've not liked it. But yeah, it's a reoccurring pattern I've noticed. But no, that's an interesting... One thing I love about First Strike, we get to see Zelda's monsters team up. It's very rare in a lot of Gerry Anderson shows. There was some Four Feather Falls episodes. You'd sometimes have Big Ben team up with Red Scalp or Big Ben team up with Pedro and Fernando, stuff like that. So it was nice to see SRAM, Lord Temple and Yuri all together because they usually have their episodes where it's just them on their own and that's it. It's a shame they didn't do more episodes like that, especially because in this episode, they're proven to be quite effective as a team. So, but also I've always preferred early, serious, dark Terrorhawks compared to the silly Terrorhawks. By the time we get to First Strike, for me personally, the show had already jumped the shark because I can't stand Play It Again SRAM. That's the worst of the worst.
I don't think you should say any more about that.
Of course, there isn't much humour in the episode at all. I mean, you get Stewed Apples at the beginning, who I'm not a fan of Stewed Apples. I think he's insufferable. Fortunately, Sister, who's even worse, I really can't stand that character. She's not even in the episode, so it's brilliant. I mean, she is the most pointless character of all the Gerry Anderson characters. Of every show he's done, that's the one who just brings nothing to the show. And if anybody says she created It Star, that could easily be rewritten. If Sister was never in the show and we needed It Star, we could have had Zelda creating a new character, or even give birth to it. You never know. I just think it was nice to go back to the occasional serious episode. So, I mean, how do you personally feel? Do you like serious Terrorhawks or do you like comedy Terrorhawks?
I am more the fan of the serious Terrorhawks. We are dealing with people who want to attack the Earth, and they've blown up a completely unarmed colony, and they've done it while laughing. I do like the little quips, like I did like the little bit of back and forth between Sergeant Major Zero and Einstein. But when it started getting too silly, I would agree, yeah. I mean, some of the episodes were good. I think, maybe tweaking quite a few things about the episode. It could have been an episode that I enjoy more. But with just most of the points that I've raised, I'd say that's why I'm not a fan of it.
You may have knocked down Colonel McClane. Actually, you've pretty much knocked down everything for me. These previous episodes were fairly higher up, but I think they've dropped a bit now because you've made me reevaluate some stuff. But nah, I'm keeping First Strike at number 2. Although, even though
you're welcome to it.
Nah, that's fair enough.
The new Captain Scarlet, Instrument Destruction, Part 1. I looked forward to it so much. I remember waking up and getting ready to watch that first episode, and just that feeling of sinking. The laser blasters as sidearms, I think, were better because lasers, they run out of charge. Battery is a clip instead. Yeah, okay, I could go with that. Some of the newer vehicles, the Spectrum Saloon car having the ability to jump over objects while in pursuit, that was a nice idea. I think that was pretty cool. The motorcycles with wings that just clip off when they landed, I'm like, no, that's ridiculous. Come on, you're pushing it there. The Rhino, maybe just keep it as the Spectrum Pursuit vehicle and it still would have been good. Don't change the name of Cloud Base to Sky Base.
That's a stupid name. I've never liked that name.
The one change I did like to Skybase was the fact that there was the robot, which was controlled by a man for a launch. And anyone who watches like Top Gun or anything, especially now I've done it myself, I'm a bit like, yeah, that is bang on. That is what you need. Because in the end, it was just always immediate launch, button push, launch. It's like there's no one sort of controlling it. It just seems to be, maybe it was just the Angels controlled it by a remote, or Lieutenant Green just pressed the button. But it made a bit more of a believable launch sequence for me. Some of the episodes I've watched and since, just Instrument Destruction just seemed like a letdown for me. It didn't live up to my expectations, and maybe it's harsh of me to compare it to the original Captain Scarlet, but it bears the name, it's using the characters. It had big boots to fill, and unfortunately, I think it didn't fill the boots.
I agree. The fact that, oh God, I'm trying to remember everything you've mentioned. Have you seen Storm at the End of the World?
Can't remember if I have or not.
There's a scene where Captain Blue gets injured, and it's very close to him actually dying. They even go to a point where Scarlet is holding Blue in his arms, bloodied up and everything, and the camera's panning away. I thought that's going to be the final shot. Captain Blue is actually going to die. It's like, we're coming to the end of the show as well. There's like about 4 episodes left. I thought, this is really good. They're going to actually shake up the status quo at last. Have Captain Blue out of the show bring him back as a Mistron if you must, fair enough, but kill him off. Nope. Last second, Dr. Gold and Captain Oka, they suddenly arrive. They should have had the balls to just kill him off and have a bit. It's such a letdown, the fact that they couldn't do it. Yeah, if you bring him back as a Mistron agent, I might accept that because, season 2, if they did make a season 2, maybe Captain Blue is now an enemy. So a new shake-up of the lineup. Or if you want to save Captain Blue and he's now indestructible, so now it's a dynamic duo of indestructible characters for season 2, maybe. It's, again, standalone episodes and cop-out endings, and everything must resort to the status quo, so I didn't like that.
I completely agree. There was a lot of things in the episodes that I thought were quite bad, and I was a bit like, The one episode that got me thinking was, I can't remember the name, but it's the episode where Captain Scarlet at the start gets blown up, but then he sort of, it comes as a ghost, and I'm like, are they actually suggesting he really is indestructible? His body might be so badly damaged, but it can repair, as we've seen. but this is now the extent of how far he can be pushed. Like almost a bit like Captain Jack Harkness in Doctor Who. It's like, how far can he be injured? Because it also makes me think, well, if it happened to Captain Scarlet, could it happen to other Mysterons? Could Mysterons that had been blown up possibly have come back? Because, you know, they explain, oh, high voltage is the only thing that kills them, but how many Mysterons have we seen in multiple episodes just get shot and fall and die? And it's like, I thought they were supposed to come back, but that was one episode that got me thinking. I was a bit like, if they thought about other things as much as this, it had the potential to be good.
What you just said, the episode was chiller, and that was
it.
That was discussed, in fact, the previous interview, and that person said the exact same thing about, do other Mysteron agents come back as ghosts? It's such a shame, though, that the end of the episode, they just fob it off as your reconstruction just took a little bit longer. Oh, that's it. It never happens ever again. So that could have been something that could have been brought up in future episodes, but no, it's just this one-off gimmick. Another thing that I didn't like is it's supposed to be a war. It's a very one-sided war. The Mysterons hardly ever won. They did quite a lot in the original series.
Oh,
In New Captain Scarlet, there's Enigma. They sent a Mysteron ship as a decoy to distract Spectrum while they go and destroy an oil refinery. And the Achilles Messenger, they kill the Mysteron traitor. And that's it. Every other time, Spectrum wins every round. It's your Saturday morning cartoon type of feeling, no different than, say, G.I. Joe or Transformers, where the villains are always beaten. One of the best things about original Captain Scarlet was Spectrum could lose just as much. They should have made the Mysterons a legitimate threat by having them win a few rounds. A lot of people are so quick to defend this one. I don't quite know why. It's one of the best shows he ever did, and I really can't see it. Story-wise, I don't agree. Production-wise, yes, and he always wants to do CGI. I'll give Gerry Anderson that. If he's proud of the final product, he has every right to be proud, but I just think it's the storyline that really is what lets it down.
Yeah, it's short of the mark. Some of the redesigns were cool, but I would have maybe, kept like the names.
And I never quite understood why, with the Spectrum vehicles, what's animals and birds got to do with an organization that's named after colors? It's not like Chameleon or something. It just seems strange that they were all animal names.
There were some changes that were good, some changes I liked. A little nod, like in Thunderbirds Are Go. I know that's not his work, but I do like that in a lot of the episodes, there are nods. The fact that, the first episode, John's watching Stingray. It did have the potential to be good. I mean, as I said, I looked forward to it so much when I heard it was coming. And I was like, I can't believe this, a new Gerry Anderson. And then first day, I was like, I can't believe this. It's not what I was expecting. And maybe that's the issue. This is definitely going to be a divider for a lot of people, I'd agree.
Totally, yes, without a doubt. Okay, that comes to the end of AJ's Keep and Destroy list, giving me a lot to think about, put a lot of things in perspective. So thank you so much for the list, AJ.
You're very welcome, and thank you for bringing me into this. When I saw the first couple of episodes you did, I was really looking forward to it, and I feel quite honoured you've let me do this, especially on today of all days, the day of Thunderbirds itself.
And that brings us to the end of our interview with AJ Frost. Once again, thank you, the audience, for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to donate to the show to help it continue, please go to Buy Me a Coffee or GoFundMe. The links are in the description. This is Adam Luff, signing out.